Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 89. I'm your host, James Shotwell, and I'm sorry we've been away. Anyone that listens to the show regularly knows that we missed last week, but there's a good reason. I was on my honeymoon. Go ahead and tell me that that's not a good reason, but I was in Alaska, 1,000 miles from my recording equipment, and to be honest with you, it was kind of nice. Getting away, I think, is really important, even if you just work, behind a computer like I do all the time. Sometimes just disconnecting, getting back out there into the real world, and remembering that nature and such is the thing can really do a lot for your, mental stability, your health, everything across the board. Anyways, the show is back, and we have a great episode for you. My guest this week is Bryan Garris, vocalist for the band Knocked Loose. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Knocked Loose, they're a fast-rising hardcore band who signed to Pure Noise Records earlier this year, and later this month, on September 16th, will release their debut full-length album, Laugh Tracks. I've been sitting with the album for about 2 months at this point, and I absolutely love it. If you're someone that loved bands like Have Heart in the early 2000s, Knocked Loose is the group you've been waiting for. They harken back to a time when hardcore was simple, direct, and so in your face that no one could deny its amazing power. When you listen to Knocked Loose, you can tell that this band is going to be huge. They have that intangible thing that just attracts people to them. There's so much energy in everything they do, and there's so much gritty reality in the lyrics. It's just great. I've been wanting to talk to Bryan ever since I first discovered the band sometime back in 2015, and this is the very first chance we've had to talk on the phone. It's actually technically the second. We tried to do this recording the other day. Our schedules didn't really end up working out, so we had to reschedule for earlier today. A couple of things happened. Number one, Knocked Loose, when we record this episode, is actually stranded in South Dakota. The band was driving from Nebraska to Seattle, where they're set up to start their upcoming tour, and their van broke down. Van broke down just a few hours before we started recording, actually, and Bryan and the rest of the group had to stay in some seedy motel, and they were now waiting, when we talked, waiting for the van to get fixed. So we talk a little bit about that, we talk a little bit about touring, but mostly we talk about the creation of Laugh Tracks, what Bryan feels is important about the band, and what he thinks they have kind of built upon with this release, and generally what he hopes people take away from it. I found that Bryan's a pretty down-to-earth guy. At the end of the day, he's just trying to be himself in the best possible way and express himself through music. And for whatever reason, that's connecting with a lot of people, and it's going to connect with a lot more people once Laugh Tracks is in stores. Before we get to the conversation, however, I got to tell you a couple of quick things. First and foremost, the sponsor for this week's show is Holix, the music industry's leading digital promotional distribution platform. What that means is that Holix works with record labels, managers, publicists, and independent artists alike from all over the world to share new and unreleased music without fear of piracy. Should leaks occur, and to be completely honest, they still do. They actually do quite often, in fact. Holix has the kind of technology needed to not only find the person responsible for a leak, but also stop the spread of unwanted files online. For more information on Holix and access to a free 30-day trial, visit Holix.com. That's HAULIX.com. Second, I really want you to follow the show on Twitter. It's at Inside Music Pod, at Inside Music POD. We post updates about guests that are going to be on the show soon. We post a lot of links to life in the music industry and advice for people hoping to one day work in the music industry. Whether you want to be the next big solo star, or you want to manage the next big band, there's something on our Twitter feed that will help you on your journey. Finally, I cannot recommend enough that you check out Laugh Tracks. In fact, you should go to Knocked Loose Bandcamp page and check out everything they've already done in anticipation for Laugh Tracks, and then when the album arrives in stores next week, you just rush out and buy it because you'll already be a diehard fan. This is the best hardcore album of 2016, hands down, no question, no competition. This band is going to be huge, and this is the moment when their rocket to the stars takes off, for lack of a better phrase. And that's a really terrible phrase, so I apologize in advance. Anyways, I'm going to play a little bit of music from not my favorite song on Laugh Tracks, but one of my favorites, one that we talk about at length in this episode. And then I'm going to get to the conversation with Bryan. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the show.
Take me
So where are you guys at today?
Right now we're in South Dakota. The van is broken down.
Oh,
We had like a 24-hour drive to Seattle from Nebraska, and we were making that last night, and around 4 or so the van overheated, and we tried to let it cool down. We put some coolant in it, and then it just got to the point where the van just would not drive, and it was shaking, and it was really bad. So we had to pull over and get this like really, really dirty motel.
that sounds like a rough night.
Yeah, it wasn't the best.
I have been stranded in South Dakota myself once or twice. It is not a place you want to be stuck for too long. I feel
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm hoping that we get it fixed soon. I know that it's being worked on, but I'm just wanting to make sure we don't spend too much money on it.
Yeah, you guys are just starting this run of shows, right? Yesterday was the first date.
Yeah, well, the one we did yesterday wasn't even technically the first day. It was like a routing show.
Mm.
The first day is technically tomorrow.
I've already seen a couple of videos pop up online from the show last night. It does look like it was a good time. I didn't realize Nebraska loved hardcore that much.
Yeah, last night was cool. It was definitely the best time we've ever played Nebraska. Like, we've played that venue a couple times, but there's a good amount of people there last night.
Now, are you guys selling the album on this tour, or I guess you will be next week, or are you starting early?
No, we're actually starting early. I didn't know that was allowed, but Pure Noise gave us the go ahead. So we sold it last night. It went really, really well, which means that now the record will just get leaked. But oh well.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I've already seen people talking about it on Twitter, but I was gonna try to see whether or not I broke it to you, depending on whether or not you had actually started selling it.
Yeah, I figured that would have happened, and but oh well. I mean, I'm just excited for people to hear it.
Dude, of course. I've gotten prety lucky. I don't remember when you guys announced it, like back in July or June, but Austin, the guy that runs PR for you guys, actually sent me the record back on that day so I could work on a feature for Substream magazine and
Awesome.
prepare for this. So I've been listening to it for like 2 months now.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm versed. I like it, dude. I loved it a lot.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to it. I've been a big fan of the EPs, and I had been one of the many people bugging you guys on Twitter about like when are we gonna get a full length? When are we gonna get a full length? And then you delivered, man. You came through.
Well, it's awesome, man. I'm glad that you like it. That's awesome.
I think everyone's gonna love it, and I think more importantly, it really kind of you guys take a step in the right direction in like a big way. Like it's still kind of anyone that likes the EPs is gonna like it, but you also make it a point to do some different stuff on this album too, or at least some bigger ideas that I think are gonna pay off for people.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to kind of explore new horizons, so to speak. We wanted to really just start writing actual songs. Like, nothing against the EPs. I still enjoy playing those songs live, but we really just wanted to focus on writing music. Like, I don't know, the EPs are pretty dumbed down, so to speak. Like, it's just heavy for the sake of being heavy. We kind of wanted to make like a full... We always used to joke and say that we would never write a full length. We were like, what are we going to do? Just write 11 breakdowns? Like, and we just didn't think that we could write enough songs to make an interesting album. So I guess we went into it with that aspect, like just had to make sure that they were actual songs instead of just one long wash part.
Yeah, I felt like counting worms is kind of the answer to anyone that's like, we want more of the breakdown stuff from the EPs. You're like, well, that's why counting worms is on the album.
Yeah, that's a little the little short guy. We wrote that so long ago, and there was like talks about making it an actual song, and we were like, no, let's just keep it short and dumb, and it's fun.
Yeah. You can bust that out in a live show anywhere, and I'm sure it'll pick the energy up if it's not there already. It's just a fast little like let's
Yeah,
party.
yeah,
When I first heard it, I texted someone and I was just like, "There's barking on this Knocked Loose album," and they were like dogs, and I was like, kind of.
yeah. I used to do that as like a mosh call. I would just bark like a dog, and people would get so hype over it. And then when we wrote that song, I was like, I'm gonna do that in this song, and I'm not gonna do it as a mosh call anymore. It's just gonna be for this song, and people seem to like it, so that's cool.
I love it.
It was weird because
Go ahead.
when we were recording that, funny story, because we recorded with Will Putney, and I haven't gotten to tell the story yet, so I'm glad you brought it up. We were recording that song, and he was like, all right, now we're doing the bark. And I did it one time, and he was like, that was cool, but I think that you can get it better. And what he did was he put that little section on a loop, and he just pressed record. And he was like, I just want you to do it every single time it comes up. The loop was like 5 seconds. So I was just sitting at the microphone barking, like I probably barked 30 times. Like that part would come, and I would just do the arr, 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 arr. And I was just, and I got it, and he stopped me, and he's like, okay, I think we have enough now to where we can sift through them. And he was like, it's weird, I've never recorded a bark, like I don't know the standard for barking on a record is. I don't know which one we should use, so that was funny.
Oh, that's great. I had that thought when I was listening to it, not of having to do it a bunch of times, but to be just in the rest of the studio while you're in the vocal booth and just listening to like the silence of you barking randomly.
Yeah. It was even funnier because I had to bark like 30 times, so.
And then listen to them all and be like, that's the right bark. That's the bark for me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's great, man. Well, I was going to ask you about that. I've talked to Will a bunch of times in the past. He's a great guy. Like, did you guys know that you wanted to work with Will? Like, when you joined Pure Noise, was that like a request you had? You wanted to do the record with Will? How did you come with him?
It was kind of like, we heard about him through a friend. Tom from Straight from the Path actually is the one that put us on to him. We met Tom in California, and we were just hanging out and talking to him. And he asked us if we'd ever be down for a producer. And I was kind of like, no. I was very uneducated in what a producer is. And I thought that it was someone that would just write our songs for us. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, we write our own songs. And he told me, like, no, that's not what he does. Like, a producer's just there to pick up on things that you didn't hear yourself. And we were kind of thinking about it, and then I remember Tom, he showed us text messages of him talking to Will, and he had sent Will Counting Worms. And Will was like, I gotta work with this band. And like when we saw those text messages, we were like, dang, like we've never had somebody of that caliber like show that much interest in us, that like they really, really want to work with us in that aspect. So like that kind of definitely like helped us make our decision. And we talked to him, and he was like super down to do it. And I was pretty nervous up until literally like the moment that I met him. Like we showed up at the studio late at night, and he wasn't there. So we like slept, and the next morning he got there, and I met him, and he was like, how do you all want to do this? And I was like, I don't know, what do you mean? And he was like, I want to track the album live. He's like, you guys are very like raw, heavy band, and I want to do it live. And as soon as he said that, like all of my like doubts and worries were like out the window. Like I knew that he got it. He understood what we were going for. He wasn't going to make this like crazy, like overproduced album. Like he was going to help us make it the best that it could be and still keep it like the feel of what Knocked Loose wanted to be. And then working with him was just absolutely great. Like I loved it. It was our first time at an actual studio because everything else was recorded at our guitar player's house, Isaac, at our guitar player Isaac's house. So it was an awesome experience, and like I really enjoyed working with him. Everybody that works at that studio, like Randy, who works at that studio, who plays in that band Trade Winds, has become a really, really great friend of mine. Like we text on a regular basis. So I'm definitely glad that we went with Will. I'm glad that everybody kind of talked me out of my doubts, and I'm glad that I'm a little bit more educated on what a producer is now.
You learn as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just like I don't know. I'm like the I don't I don't mean to sound corny, but like I'm the guy in the band that listens to like mainly like hardcore stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I'm like, well, how would we pay for it? Let's just record it in your garage.
No, that's
Like let's.
I get it.
So yeah,
Yeah, no, that's like the aesthetic of like, especially like true hardcore fans. Like you're like, why do we need a studio?
yeah.
No, I
But
get
I'm
that.
so glad that we did it at a studio and not in his garage.
Well, I think the whole idea of recording it live really kind of preserves what people would think of as like the aesthetic of the EPs. Like it still has that raw sound. It's just hits a little bit heavier, and it's just it sounds a little bit tighter overall. Everything's a little bit more balanced. Works out great.
Yeah, it was cool because we our drummer has always played to a metronome live. He has like these in ears, and he would play to a metronome in the guitar tracks live. So when we went to record, and Will was like, "I want to do it live," that means no metronome. So like our drummer was kind of nervous about that, but he absolutely crushed it, and it made the songs a lot faster than they originally were, which I think is cool because the whole record is kind of like way faster than anything we've previously put out. And since then, our drummer has ditched the metronome live. Now he just plays, and he's a lot more comfortable with it. He's not chasing the metronome. Uh, and it was definitely a learning experience for him. He crushed the recording process. Like listening to the record, and I'm like, damn, these drums are good. Like it was cool. I think that recording it live definitely changed our outlook on what the band should be from now on. So it's cool because not only was it a learning experience to record in that kind of light, but it also helped our live show tremendously because now we're way more comfortable. We're not chasing a metronome. We can be a little dramatic on certain breakdowns and slow them down if we want to, just to make them sound heavier.
Yeah. No, I think it's pretty cool. Like, and it seems like it all kind of happened kind of fast for you guys because you formed in 2014, and then we get to the early 2016, and people are already like, "Where's the album? When's it coming?" and stuff. And you guys seem to like have grown in leaps and bounds since like March, basically.
Yeah, it's definitely been very fast. We played our first show in 2013, but we didn't tour until uh, the summer of 2014. But I wouldn't even necessarily count that tour. I would say that it basically started in like the winter of 2014 because we got our own van, and at that point we just didn't really stop touring. Uh, we like being on the road. Like we have a lot of people telling us like, damn, you guys are so busy. You guys are always on the road. And like, we're just doing what we thought bands do. Like we tour as much as we can. We take up any offer, not any offer, but like any offer that makes sense. We're touring with our friends' bands and stuff, and like it's definitely paid off. Like we have a lot of friends in a lot of places, and we've played a lot of really great shows. Like things are going really well for us right now. And then as soon as 2016 started, we started like a whole new world of touring with these support tours that we've been doing. Like in March, we did Counterparts Expire and Gideon. Last month, we did a Casey Estrano, Oceano, and Culture Killer. And then now we're starting Stick to Your Guns, Straight from the Path, and Expire, which is like, it's crazy because these are like big shows, way bigger than the touring that we're used to. And it's awesome. It's been incredible.
So when you look at Laugh Tracks now, and the world's going to get to hear it. Well, some people are going to hear it as soon as you get to their town in the next week, but everyone else will get to hear it next weekend. Like for you, what do you hope people take away from this record? Because you get through a lot of stuff on these songs. Like it would take us a long time to break down what you talk about throughout the record. So, for people that once they get past the heaviness and all that, their expectations, like what do you hope they kind of take away from Laugh Tracks?
Yeah, it's weird that you bring it up because we were just kind of breaking down the songs lyrically the other night. Like someone in my band asked me what I say in a part, and I told them, and then I was like, actually, I'll just send the lyrics to the group chat. So like I sent them and was like, just in case you all want these. And then it kind of opened up for the conversation of like, what's this about? What's this about? And like some of them already knew, but some of them were kind of just like assuming, and kind of found like an easier way to sum up every song. But I would say in total, the one thing that I wanted to get across lyrically was just, I guess I would say honesty. Like that's one consistent theme throughout the entire record. Everything I say, I mean, and I would never put something out that was like forced or faked. I would never like jump on a trend of some kind of social injustice just to like put my beliefs in concrete that people will like know that I'm on a certain side, blah blah blah. Like I write about what has affected me.
Yeah.
It's all very personal. I never write with the intentions of anybody relating to me. I don't know, that kind of sounds rude, but like
No,
if people relate to it, that's definitely a plus. But it's definitely all personal experience. So yeah, I guess I would just say honesty. I feel like a lot of people nowadays, they will see things on the internet, and granted, like there's a lot of important things going on in the world recently, a lot of like bad things like Donald Trump, like things like that. And like people will just become such a outspoken source against this thing that they see all over the internet. And it's not that I don't think that they believe in what they're saying. I just feel like they would have never wrote a song about Donald Trump if it wasn't for everybody else hating Donald Trump. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They just kind of hop on the trending topics.
Yeah, and like I don't necessarily want to do that. Like there's a lot of things in the world that I don't agree with, but I don't feel the need to voice every single one. You know what I mean?
And everything
Like,
you feel isn't an opportunity to like market your band.
yeah, exactly. Like obviously, I don't know, this gets kind of, I'm not trying to get so political, but like obviously everything that's been happening, like with the police force, is terrible. Like, it's people being shot and killed by the police it's awful. But I don't feel the need to talk about it being awful. Like, you should know that I think it's awful. Like, people are being murdered. Like, any normal person in the world would think that's absolutely terrible.
Exactly. No, I get what you're saying, man, and I think that's kind of respectable because I mean, at the end of the day, I found the only way that you can really, do justice for your fans is to first do justice for yourself. And when it comes to a songwriting standpoint, like you got to kind of speak your own truth, and people will see through it if all of a sudden half the songs on this record were about topics in the news. Like it would just be like, okay, well, he didn't really dig too deep into himself to put this album together. And I think that's kind of especially in your case, that's kind of the appeal of what you do is people feel like they're kind of following along with your narrative, like your life and your experiences.
Yeah, and I think you definitely put that in a great way. Like, there's one song on the record where I kind of talk about somebody else's experience, and but it was like a friend of mine. I had a friend get kicked out of a fraternity for being gay, and I know that like equal rights when it comes to like the gay community is like a very hot topic right now. But when my friend told me that, he told me that years ago, and it like really like stuck with me and bothered me to the point where the lyrics just kind of came out. And that's one thing is like I will never force my lyrics, which is why a lot of them end up being personal experience, because that's just what comes out of me. If I ever have like a writer's block, I'll just like walk away. Like I will not sit there and like force myself to write something. So like I wrote this song about my friend getting kicked out of a fraternity, and it's Oblivion's Peak. It's the first song on the record.
Gotcha.
And I knew that like if I was going to put that song out, I was like, I gotta do research like about just fraternities, and like I want to make sure that like if somebody tries to talk to me about this topic, my guns are loaded. Because if I'm going to have a song that's that strongly opinionated, like I need to know where I stand. And that's just one thing that I think is important is like if I feel like if people are going to talk about something, they need to know every aspect. They need to know, because since we've been playing that song, I've had people come up to me and say like, I'm in a fraternity and I'm really sorry to hear what happened to your friend. Like, you shouldn't hate all fraternities, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just kind of like, well, I respect that you're not one of the bad ones, but it's not my thing.
No, that
and
makes
if they
sense.
ever ask me why, I have like a million points to make. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, totally. And how did you know that that was going to be the lead song on the record? Was it just felt right?
Uh, I feel like the beginning of that song is just a great opener.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's a very strong way to start the record. It's also one of the longest songs we've ever written. I think it's like almost 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And I mean, before when it was like a lot slower, it was like over 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But
you bookend the album with your two longest songs. Because laugh tracks, it's you bookend the beginning and the end are the two longest songs on the record, and I think they're also your longest songs. Period.
I didn't make that. I didn't make that connection, so that's kind of cool that we did that way. But yeah, I knew that we all just kind of had that feeling. Like, well, when we wrote Oblivion's Peak, we were like, okay, this is the intro, unless we write a cooler one.
I like that.
We wrote the record, and like nothing else fit as well being like the opener. And it's weird because the first 3 songs on the record are the singles that we released, and none of us wanted to do that. And when we were asked, like, Pure Noise was like, what singles do you want? We were like, oh, we like this one, and this one. And then we noticed that those were the first three, and we were like, oh, crap. Oh, well. Like, well, oh, well, it's just three of them. But, like, usually I don't like doing that because, like, I feel like I'm very much the kind of person that will listen, that when an album comes out, I listen to it from beginning to end. Uh, and when albums, like when the first like couple songs on the album are the songs that you already know, it's kind of like, okay, I had to wait too long to hear something new. But I think with how fast we've been promoting the record, like we just released the last single like a week ago, and the record comes out in a week or two. So I think that it won't necessarily affect it. But yeah, that was just a little funny story about the layout of the album.
No, I get it. My favorite song kind of jumps around a lot, but the one that I keep coming back to, and I blame it on the bass line, is My Heroes. The way it opens with just that deep bass line, you're like, oh, this is going to be good. Like, it pulls you in so fast in a way that the rest of the album is, it's all aggressive, but that bass line at the beginning is a little, it kind of lures you in a nice way. I like it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too, honestly. I really like that song. I think that it's got some of the best riffs that our guitar players have ever written. Once that bass line in the beginning kicks in, I love that riff so much.
So fun.
And I feel like I can say that because I didn't write it.
Yes, that's fair.
It'd be different if I was like, oh, I love that vocal part. Like that'd be kind of weird, but I can confidently say that I love that riff so much. It reminds me of like Crowbar, but like not. I don't know.
So
and this is
go ahead.
The song lyrically too is one that like it's one of the later ones that I wrote on the record, but it's definitely one that it just felt right, and I really like the way that it turned out.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of what sells my favorite songs from your band is like there's a conviction that you kind of hit in your vocals that really just sells whatever you're saying, and that song on the record really just nails it. Like the delivery that you have sells the message, and I think it's an important message that is a great that you apply it to yourself, but it's something I think anyone will be able to relate to, but it works because you kind of tell it from that first person's perspective, your perspective.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you.
No problem, man. Now
I wrote.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine, man.
I'm not trying to talk too much, but I wrote that song about right after Prince died. My mom was like super upset about Prince dying, and not that I wasn't upset about Prince dying, but I kind of like, I don't know, in my head I was like, what makes a person get so upset over someone dying that they don't know? So I kind of wrote the song from like that perspective, like how am I this hurt? Like it feels like I just lost a best friend, but I've never met this person in my life, kind of thing.
No, I think that translates, and it is one of those things, especially in a year like this where we've lost so many like kind of notable celebrities. It's something that it's worth thinking about, like what makes you have a connection in the first place to somebody in any kind of artistic way, and then how does it grow to the point where like people are moved to tears when they die? Like you never met this person, you might not have even seen him in concert, but for some reason you feel that connection.
Gene Wilder passed away the other day.
Yeah, I was actually on my honeymoon in Alaska when Gene Wilder died, and I was like crying with my new wife. I was like, I read the news and I started to cry. So that's an example where I was like, I've never met Gene Wilder, but I love his movies. I mean,
I love Gene Wilder. I grew up like Young Frankenstein is one of my favorite movies.
Of course.
But congratulations on getting married, by the way.
Well, thank you. It was just needed for the story. I wasn't trying to brag.
Oh no, it's okay.
It'd be a weird brag.
It's definitely worth bragging about.
Yeah, I guess. No, I would say so. I mean, I'm happy about it. It'd be strange. I do want to know, I know we're a little short on time, but I wanted to ask, so you guys start this tour officially tomorrow, hopefully, depending on the van.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys think you're gonna make Seattle tonight? Is that where you're going?
Um, we're 22 hours away from Seattle,
So
so
probably not.
the van is supposed to be getting fixed around 3 or 4,
All
which
right.
it is 12:30 right now. So if we leave at around 3 or 4, we will probably make it to Seattle around 5 or 6,
Okay.
which means we will be able to play the show. We will just be very tired, but luckily we have friends in Seattle. We already have a place to stay, so we can just play that show real quick, crash, and then we have to go to Canada.
Then you get to deal with all the fun of border crossing with all of your equipment. It's great.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. It'll be our second time, so hopefully it's a little bit smoother than last time.
It's never easy for almost any band.
Yeah.
I no, that's an experience. That's one of those experiences, like being on the other side of the vocal booth that like most people that like bands and love music don't ever get to experience or know about, like the struggles of getting through border patrol with all of your gear.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely just like are they going to feel like messing with me today? Like,
Exactly. How do we not look like they should mess with us?
yeah, they actually made fun of how I was dressed the last time we crossed the border.
Great.
We like got out and I was wearing like shorts and a hoodie, and our drummer was wearing like a flannel t-shirt buttoned up with pants, and they all like pulled us out and was like, who's the leader of the band? And everybody like pointed to me, and I was like, yes sir. And he looked me up and down, and he looked at our drummer and was like, I'm gonna talk to this guy because he's dressed better. And I was like, okay.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll get out of your way. No problem. That's one of those situations where you're like, whatever I have to say to get out of here as fast as possible.
Yeah, it was so funny too. One real quick before we get off the border thing, we crossed the border one time, and they were pulling us out and asking us all these questions, like they were like interrogating us, and like and I'm from Kentucky, and they were like, where do you live? And I was like, I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and they were like, have you always lived there? And I was like, yeah, my whole life. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, uh. I lived in Florida for a month when I was like not even a month old. And he was like, okay. And he wrote it down. And I went over to the band, and I was like, they were just very like persistent on finding out where else I've lived. I was like, and I told them I lived in Florida when I was a baby, and they like wrote it down. Like, I don't know why that's so important, but they didn't believe me that I had just lived in Kentucky. And everybody in my band was like, Bryan, you just moved back from Ohio. And I was like, damn it. Like, I completely forgot that I lived in Ohio for 6 months with my girlfriend. And then, like, when I moved back to Kentucky, it was like I was there for like a month before we left for this tour and went to Canada. So I was like, oh, shit, I just lied to them. I hope they don't, like, find that out. But, like, I just completely forgot that I had lived out of state.
It's those moments happen anytime you get into one of those. Like you always feel like you look more guilty because you have moments where like your memory lapses like that, and you're like, oh crap, now they're gonna think that I'm like a conspiracy theory. I don't know. They're gonna think something terrible if they
Yeah.
know the truth. And then like a day or two later, you're like, you were just momentarily crazy because you're like, why would they know that I lived in Ohio? Why would it matter? It's
Yeah.
just,
Exactly.
oh man,
Our merch guy was like, our merch guy just kept teasing me. He's like, "Yeah, you're fucked. Like they're about to come over here and cuff you."
yeah. Didn't tell us about Ohio. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, well I wish you the best on this tour. I think the album's great. I think it's gonna do wonders for you. I've really enjoyed watching the way your band is one of those rare cases, increasingly rare cases where there was a hype for you guys on the internet and kind of on the hardcore underground before like news websites started to cover you and before everyone was talking about you. There was this hype that you would hear in kind of circles of hardcore music. People would be like, have you heard of this band? And that's something I don't really see a lot of anymore, and I've loved watching you kind of develop and get the time in the spotlight that's slowly starting to come your way. And I think that once the world gets to hear this album in full, it's really going to take you to a new level, and I'm excited to see that happen.
Well, awesome. I really, really appreciate it.
No problem,
It
man.
means a lot.
I think there needs to be more bands like Knocked Loose in the world, and I hope this album inspires more people to do that. Not that you want more
Thank you.
competition, but I think you're on the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
path. I think you're doing something that hardcore has missing for the last few years, at least in a way that it's getting the kind of attention that Knocked Loose has been demanding this year. And alternative press is covering hardcore music again because you guys have new singles out, and I think that that's an exciting thing to see happen. And maybe you don't see that you are doing something that's kind of impacting the bigger hardcore community just yet, but I think you will once this album gets out there.
Well, thank you. That really means a lot.
No problem, man. Well, thank you because the album's great. This conversation has been super fun, and I hope maybe after you get to the end of this run or whenever you guys come through Minnesota next, because that's where I'm at, that maybe we can get together in person. We'll do this again, and we'll talk about that first tour after the album's out.
Yeah, absolutely. We I don't know if we have any plans to come through there, but I don't think we've been there since November of last year, so I'm sure it'll be sometime soon.
You guys are never off the road for too long. You'll get there.
Yeah, we our last tour ended 2 weeks ago, and we're on day one of the other one. So
Yeah. Well, I hope the rest of it goes better than today has, man, and I wish you all the best.
thank you, I appreciate it, man.
All right, have a great- Go
Real
ahead.
quick, I have a weird question.
Go ahead, man.
This might just be me thinking too far into it, but do you do like what magazine or blog is it that you work for?
Well, I work for Substream Magazine. I do a lot of writing for them. This podcast is run by this company called Holics that does like when your album gets shared with people in the press before it's released. Holics is what they use to send that album to people. It's like a secure anti-piracy thing.
Do you do a lot of podcasts?
Yeah, this show happens every week, and then I make appearances on other shows and promote the podcast. But like the last guest was Chris Farron from Side One Dummy Records, and I think Aaron Gillespie is going to be on the show next week. I think.
Have you ever done a podcast with Keith Buckley?
I have not.
Oh, okay, because there's this podcast that I just recently listened to, and I swear your voice sounds so much like the guy that did the podcast with him, to the point where I was like sitting here like, I've got to ask him before we get off here because it sounds just like the guy.
No, I've been fortunate enough to interview Keith and meet him a few times, but I haven't done a podcast. I've done a lot of. I'll get there. I always say I'm going to get there. This is like I think you're going to be episode 88, so.
Oh, sick.
So yeah, it's coming along. Like I said, we spread the gamut. Will Putney was one of the first guests on the show. I love that guy. I love his bands.
Oh, awesome.
I love his production. So when I figured out you worked with him, I was like, that's a good pairing.
Yeah.
But all right, man.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't actually know that this was a podcast. That's awesome because I love listening to podcasts, and I was wondering if I was ever going to get to do one. So this is my first. All right, and that's really awesome.
I'm sure you'll do plenty more. Now that the album's coming out, I'm sure you'll get a few more offers. Don't worry about it.
All right.
But I'll let you get to the day. Enjoy South Dakota while you're still there as much as anyone can, and then hopefully you get on your way soon. Talk to you later.
Yeah. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.